Why do people quit in 2 weeks?
Often it's the wrong goal. Sometimes they don't know that they're not tracking the results, so they never see progress. You never have to search for failure. You have to search for progress. Like, another way I say it is like, fear comes free, hope takes work.
What's up, wealth builders? Today, I've got a 2-time New York Times best-selling author. He's written a book on how to accomplish your goals. So I'm going to go dive deep into it because we all want to hit bigger and better goals. I've got Jon Acuff. What's up, man?
It's great to see you again, Ryan.
I know. Our last podcast was a couple of years ago, and it did really well, especially when I was just starting the podcast.
Yep.
I mean, people loved it. So
I appreciate that. I'm glad we got to talk again.
Yeah. So you've got a lot of books since that last one. Yeah. And I think the biggest one was about setting goals.
Yeah, I wrote a book called All It Takes Is a Goal. And you're right. Everybody is curious about more. We did a study with a PhD named Mike Peasley, professor, and we asked 3,000 people if they feel like they're living up to their potential, and 96% said no. So almost everyone on the planet goes, there's something more, I'm capable of more. It's a question of how do I do it? And that's what the book was about.
I always find it interesting when I find authors who are really good researchers, right? Like those are kind of my favorite books when they do it. Like James Clear did all these studies on, habits. And I loved reading like Michael Lewis's books and all the research he did on whatever he was covering. And so like, where did you do your research to figure all this out?
Well, for me, that was the big shift. I went from being an author who had an idea in his office, wrote it solo, and hoped it helped people, to doing research and going, okay, before we start, let's identify a real problem real people have. So that's where working with the PhD helped a lot, because we would say, I don't want to write a book that people don't need, so let's go make sure they need it. And then we'd drill down and go, what do they really need? And then I would test the idea. The book is the last thing. The book is the last thing I do. First, I've taught it to thousands of people on stage, in courses and challenges, offline. And so by the time I write the book, there's 30 real stories from 30 real people. I'm not guessing if it works. I'm going,
proof.
I've tested it, it works, and you can see yourself in it. I'm only 48. If I write a 10th book about my story, like, good grief, I haven't landed on the moon. Like, so I need other stories, I need other research. That was a shift for me as a writer, and it changed how I was able to communicate.
Yeah, it's funny because that's how I ended up writing my second book, The Wealthy Way. Was it started as a course and just like kind of something I was teaching, and I did it for a year. And they're like, dude, you need to make this a book.
Yeah, it's better to meet a need than invent a need.
Right.
Like, from a business perspective, you know that better than anybody. Like, it's expensive and time consuming to invent a need. It's fun when people go, hey, we need this. Will you create something? And you go, yeah, I'll do that. And then you get to serve an audience that's already existing.
Right. So let's talk about it. Goal setting. What do people need to know?
Well, there's a ton of mistakes. One is they go into it and go, I've got to go from nothing to everything. So they go, I got to go big or go home. And they commit to a goal they've never tried or experimented with, which is like marrying a person you just met. So New Year's resolutions, the first thing that are wrong about New Year's resolutions, in January, somebody goes, I've never done this. I'm going to commit to a year. And it's not going to work because, again, you haven't tried it for a week or 2 weeks or a month, let alone a year. So no wonder Strava studied this. Strava, the #1 fitness tracking app in the world, studied 800 million athletic activities to pinpoint when do people quit their goals. And it wasn't in February, it wasn't in March, it was the second Friday in January. They call it
2 weeks they quit.
Didn't even make it past 2 weeks. And a big part of that is people go, I've never run, I'm going to do an Ironman. I've never written a book, I'm going to write one this weekend. I've never had a business, I'm going to try to get my own space tomorrow. And they swing from what I call the comfort zone into the chaos zone. And we yo-yo back and forth between those two zones. And we talk about the comfort zone a lot. Most people don't even know the chaos zone exists. But for a lot of high performers, people watching this, listening to this, swing back and forth between never doing something to trying to do everything all at once. And it falls apart because it's not sustainable, it's not tested, and they haven't built toward it. They've jumped toward it, which is romantic. And the internet tells you, like, sometimes you got to jump off a cliff and grow wings on the way down. That's never how gravity works.
Burn the boats.
Yeah, burn the boat. You got to. And so it sounds like a good idea. It just doesn't work in real life.
Got it. So is the solution then to set smaller like steps as goals, or what?
The solution is you build what I call a goal ladder. So most people have a broken goal ladder, meaning they have a 12-foot ladder and they have 2 rungs. One that's 6 inches off the ground that says first day. One that's 12 feet high that says make $1 million. And they have
5 years.
Yeah, they have no rungs between them. And they go, I don't know how to get up there. So what I like to do is say, have the big goal. It inspires you to get started. have the small goal, it keeps you going. So what I try to help people with is go, how do we add a lot of rungs to your ladder so it's really easy to climb versus going, I have the first day, I have the 5-year, goal, I have nothing in between. That's where people die in the middle.
Yeah. So I think for me, I kind of naturally did that because I've always been, obviously, so for me, I'm faith driven, and faith is, we know like our end destination.
Yeah.
Right?
Driven by eternity.
Right? Driven by eternity. And we just don't really know, what it's going to look like in between that.
Sure.
Right? We know where we're going, but it's like faith is just simply taking the next step, the next ladder rung, right?
Well, I had a friend say, God's, a light unto your path, not a light unto your mile. So we go to him and go, hey, I want the next 10 miles mapped out. And he's like, that's not how it works. So from a faith perspective, there were times where I would say, God, if you'll give me a map, I'll follow it. But he knows me well enough to know if he gives me a map, I'll worship the map. I'll leave the relationship. So as far as a bit by bit, 100%, the manna is new every day. I don't get 10 days of manna ever. I don't get a month of manna. And it's the same with building a business. It's the same with having a great marriage. You can't binge a marriage. You couldn't say to your wife, hey, we're going to have a really great weekend alone together, and then I'm going to kind of bounce for the next 3 months mentally. Is that like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
And so it's the same with goals. It's the same with faith. There's all these little things you do along the way that, again, are sustainable. I'm more interested now in successful people who have done it for 20, 30, 40 years.
Dude, I've literally had the same conclusion.
The dude who has one good YouTube channel for a year, like, it's cool, one good book, whatever. I look at the Craig Rochelle's, the Ed Milet's, the John Gordons, and go, you have something for 30, 40 years. You haven't blown up your life. You haven't got lost in it. You're doing things along the way. What are you doing? That's what's interesting to me as somebody who's almost 50 going, what does 70 look like? How is Maxwell where he is? What are the steps? How do I do that?
Yeah. Maxwell was in here about 3-4 weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
So I got to meet him for the first time.
And he's great.
It's interesting just watching this guy. He's been doing it for decades.
Yeah, and invented the genre in a lot of ways. Like, I talked to him about that. We did an event together. And he said, John, what most people don't know is I had to leave behind everything I knew to go into business. So when he did his thing...
Because he was a pastor, right?
He was a pastor. So early 80s, when he felt like, okay, I'm going to go into the business space, I see a need there, he had to leave 90% of what he knew to talk about because he was going into a new market. And that was nobody did that. Like, right. So he was an icebreaker boat for a lot of other guys like me, like you, that was like, I'm going to try to do this. What does it look like? So yeah, I love the way he approached it.
Yeah. I've been reading a lot. You mentioned the book Driven by Eternity, and it's just talking about endurance. And, Paul always talks about running the race, not giving up, staying strong, fighting the good fight. And it's like, there's such an emphasis on just enduring to the end. And the more I look at guys in business, the more I realize, like, man, those are the ultra successful people. Yeah. And it's like, actually, it's a crazy. Used to work with Ramsey.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like Ramsey has done literally the same thing.
Yeah.
For like 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Just doing a talk show.
Yeah. The
message has never changed.
And he says that when we would work together, he would say, he would sometimes joke with his audience, you know what I'm going to say? Sell the car. Like, he has a handful of things. And that's, I think if you made a list of people who have stayed faithful to a message and haven't gotten distracted by a different, shinier thing, like, Dave's got to be close to the top of the list.
Yeah, I don't know anyone else who's never
stayed on that and said, and is now harvesting a field that he's planted for decades. Like,
well, and also too, you think about how many fiery darts he's faced along the way. Even like guys like me, who earlier in my career I would criticize, I'd be like, bro, like, people need debt. I made my money because I took debt.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, well, number one, he's helping a different person than maybe I'm helping. And then number two, it's like, but you know what? Regardless of philosophy, you can't dispute his longevity and his commitment to the mission and his message and everything else. And like, I respect that more than anything, maybe even if I don't necessarily agree with some of the advice.
You know who else is like that is Dan Cathy. I spent about a year with Dan Cathy, the CEO of Chick-fil-A, helping him write leadership ideas. And I saw firsthand, like, if we went to an event and somebody came up to him and said, what do you do? And they didn't know who he was. He'd go, I'm in customer service. And he wasn't saying that so that later they'd go, oh, it's amazing that you're a billionaire. He really believed that. When we visited a Chick-fil-A location, the first thing he did was empty the garbage. because he thought like that was his mission, that was his way. Even with Trilith Studios, like if you haven't toured what they're doing in Fayetteville yet, it's insane, dude. They are reinventing Hollywood. And I just went and did a tour of it recently for an event. And they said, you know, when we opened up this one big studio that Marvel's doing a bunch of stuff in, Dan wanted to do a red carpet event. And we said to Dan, nobody does red carpet events for buildings. You do them for movies. And he goes, we're going to do it. So they did a red carpet event for everyone who had built the building.
Wow.
So electricians, plumbers, all their families got dressed up. And so I've seen him. And I remember when I was working with him, he was like, we're going to be $1 billion company. They weren't even $1 billion yet.
Wow.
And now you look at their plan. And so.
And they destroy all of the competition.
They're killing it in every way possible. They grew like crazy during COVID. So I've been able to see a handful of leaders like a Dave, like a Craig, like an Andy Stanley, like a Dan Cathy, who have had long-term things and been able to go, okay, they're never casual about their goals. Anybody you meet that's high performing is never casual about their time. They're not casual about their relationships. They're not casual about their spiritual life. Like they're very deliberate.
Everything's
and so for me,
yeah,
that's one of the things that I've tried to mirror in my own life.
Yeah. It's funny. I use Chick-fil-A as an example too. Like, it's like, dude, they stayed committed to their core values and everything else. They work 1 day less a week than everyone else. And their revenue is like 3-4x times what most other companies are per location. And they didn't franchise. They own them all. It's like insane. It shouldn't be possible, but you know, that's when you get into the whole spiritual side of things where it's like, well, God can do whatever he wants.
Yeah. And Dan, one of the things he taught me, I was asking him about purpose. And he said, you know, the verse where it's like, your yoke is light and easy. He said, I interpret that as when you're in your zone, to other people on the outside, it looks difficult. People go, I don't know how I'd ever give speeches like you, or I don't know how I'd ever run, you know, this big event, Ryan. Like that seems stressful, but when you're in your spot, it's not. Even the challenges, there's a light and easiness to it. Yeah. And so I've always reminded myself of, okay, I know I'm in the right spot when I feel light and easy.
Yeah. As you were talking too, it reminded me of Patrick Lencioni, who I'm sure you know, and I was at his office doing a podcast with him. And the reason it made me think of it is because he was also doing things with Chick-fil-A, and he was telling me about just how they've operated and gotten to where they've gotten. But even like with him, similar to other authors you mentioned and people, it's like, dude, this guy's been writing his books, you know, on leadership and everything for like 20, 30 years. I met his staff and they're like, oh yeah, I've been here for 20 years. I've been here. I'm like, dang, you have staff that's been around for 20 years? That's crazy.
That's the goal. Like that's the culture. That's the, you know, my assistants worked with me for 9 years.
Yeah.
And I'll sometimes meet other people and go, I'm on my 7th assistant. And I'm like, man, that's chaos. Like, man, that doesn't give you long-term reps together. And I'm sure it's the same with you. You have people on your team that you've worked together for a long time. And that's what I want to do. I'm curious from your perspective, were you always a driven, ambitious person, or was there a moment where it changed? Like, were you a kid that at 3 had 7 paper routes, you were in the maternity ward, like selling lollipops, or did you grow into it?
Yeah, no, I was always driven.
Yeah.
It was just by design. I remember when I would get my homework on Monday at school. This is in elementary school. No one told me to do this. It was just like instinct. I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to get it all done right now.
Yeah.
So I just got it all done for the entire week.
And just enjoyed the rest of the week.
Exactly. Just chill out. And then I took that habit throughout my whole career. I never actually did homework, and I would get over a 4.0. Like I would just do it in class. The moment they gave it to me, I'm like half listening, half just getting it done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I want to go play baseball and enjoy my life and like do that.
Second question, when did you first start paying for knowledge? Like when did you go books, courses, coaches, I'm going to invest in me getting better? When did that happen?
Well, in hindsight, I was always doing it through my parents and coaches in baseball.
Yeah.
So like I was always trained, and my dad would hire the best hitting coaches, the best fielding coaches, strength training. Like I was always doing that my entire life. And then when I finally got into business, for some reason I was an idiot. I just didn't even correlate that, coaching is what got me to this
in
point.
This section of my life, it worked really well. I don't bring it over here.
And I think it also too was my surroundings at that time, as I was coming into business, it was very like anti-guru, especially in the real estate game.
Yeah.
There was like all these new lawsuits.
Was there a backlash, like where lawsuits had happened and it swung the other direction?
Exactly. That's exactly what happened. Because there was all these big companies that were making like hundreds of millions, billions, doing like these events, and then they're charging $50,000, and the product sucked, and so then like websites like Bigger Pockets came along, and they were like, oh no, you never need to hire a guru. Just you can do it all for free. You can read books, listen to the podcast, and so that's how I got started, and it worked for me because I'm a driven guy. It doesn't work for most people, but eventually I realized, I was like, wait a minute, why would a coach work for free? That doesn't make any sense. Why would... And I was like, and I've been hiring coaches my whole life as a athlete. Why would I not hire a coach right now for this? And it just was like, I'm an idiot. And then, since then.
And then you went all in.
Yeah.
Nice.
What about you?
I mean, I would say it's been gradual. I would say it was like conferences. I always got the sense that like at a conference, I could take a bunch of notes, get some ideas. Books, for instance, like I read 100 books a year, so I'm a big book guy. But I think there's been levels. Like I have a business coach now that's really helped a ton, and I've already seen a ton of growth from that relationship. And then being around other people has raised my definition of what's successful and also what's appropriate or possible. So I think that I've really challenged my own limiting kind of ideas, or soundtracks, a phrase I would use, where being in rooms, being in that entrepreneurs group with you for 2 years. We were around people that were trying different things that I didn't even know they existed, or challenged my definition of, okay, this level of success is possible. This level is possible. And so getting around other people helped me a lot. And then like my eureka moment was when I became a runner, I started running with runners because it made me better. Like they knew things about shoes and courses and races I didn't know. They knew things about cadence. And then when I started to grow a business, it was like, why wouldn't I do the same thing for my business? And if I can get around those other people, I get faster too. And so I think that was, for me, kind of the process. Yeah, and I think too, it goes back to, whether you're trying to hire mentors or getting the right peers who are doing it. And it's like, I look at what we were doing and how we met a couple of years ago. And, for those who don't know, we had like an online, Bible study prayer group that would meet like once a week. And I got invited by Sean Cannell, who's, out here in Vegas, and we become good friends since. And I've learned a lot from him about YouTube when I was first starting YouTube back then. But then I remember meeting guys like you who, already a successful author. And then when I wanted to write a book, I remember you helped me find who was going to publish it and the ghostwriter and all those things. That's only because I met you, because you're a success. You already did it. It's like, all right, dude, like, what should I do? And then I remember meeting guys like Ruslan, who at the time wasn't really doing social media. And he was asking me, he's like, bro, how are you doing it? And then now I look at him today, I'm like, bro, you're killing it. I see him everywhere.
And so it's like, it's just getting around the right movers and shakers. And it's like, we all had different abilities, but we all had the same purpose.
Well, and being humble enough to ask the question, to take the advice, to do the rep. Like, because we've all been in situations where you're giving somebody advice and you can tell they're not going to take any of it. It's like throwing a tennis ball against a wall. Like, it just keeps coming back at you. And you go, okay, well, then, like, I'm not going to pour into you. Like, I remember a friend of mine, an executive that's probably 20 years older than me, when people would say, hey, I would love to take you to breakfast and ask you some questions, he would say, sure, 5 a.m., this part of town. And if they said, it's too early, the traffic's going to be bad, it's far away from me, he'd go, you know what, never mind. Because if you wouldn't do that part, you wouldn't do the rest. Like, another story, a real estate guy I know, massive guy at Sotheby's, his thing is, his favorite book is Ninja Selling. Like, it's his favorite book, and he's super successful. And when young agents go, I want to learn from you, I'd love to be part of your team, he gives them a copy of Ninja Selling. And on page 51 is his cell phone number. And if they never call him, he knows they never read the book. And if you, as a leader, go, this book means everything to me, it's great. And if you won't even read the book, like, you're not going to do the rest of the stuff. And so it's this really easy filter for him. So I think that's part of it too, is that you can be in those groups, but if people get the sense that you have an attitude of, I already know everything, or I'm not going to take the advice, or I'm arrogant, then I think people start to go, well, I don't want to pour into a cup that already thinks it's full. So I'm going to find somebody else to pour into. And I think that's part of it, is you have to have a humble heart about it. Yeah. I'm actually now reflecting on that group and how much I've done with almost everyone. Because, Pete Vargas is how I met Grant Cardone. And became friends. Eric, I've actually talked to a lot about franchising.
Pedro Adeo came here and
Nice.
taught us quite a bit about challenges and offers and things. And I'm just like, wow, actually, like almost everyone in that group I did something with.
Well, Pedro, this was 2020 when my book Soundtracks was coming out, and every live event I had got canceled. So as a live event speaker, I had to reinvent my business during the pandemic. And he was like, oh, here's how to do a challenge. And he stepped in and it changed. 4 years later, we're still doing challenges that are a big part of our business because he was willing to go, oh no, I got the cheat code. Like and he gave it to our team and was like, here's what to do. And so, yeah, you can look back on that and go, oh, the people that I was connected to are always challenging me and stretching me.
Yeah, no, 100%. So let's go back to goals, right? So a lot of people obviously are trying to just jump to the end.
Yeah.
They're not creating the rungs. And so you said that essentially we got to create these steps. Like how exactly does that work? How do you even know what the first step is?
Well, I mean, a big thing is like, let's just take an experiment. So I'm a big believer of like, what if you just came up with a list of things you want to do? Not the perfect list. Because what happens is when you start to goal chase, all your fears wake up. Like fear never bothers somebody who isn't trying. Fear will give you a free pass. If you're sitting on the couch, you're watching 34 hours of TV a week, according to Nielsen. That's the stat. The average American watches 34 hours of TV a week. If you're not doing anything, you'll never get bothered. Imposter syndrome doesn't bother people who aren't trying. The only time I didn't feel like a real writer was when I tried to write, and I had to work through that. So a big part of it is, okay, let's just come up with a list of things you're even curious about. What would that look like? Big things, small things. Let's brainstorm some goals, and then let's pick 1 to 3 to give a test on. To say, okay, I really want to write a book. So I'm going to read but I'm not going to go, I bought a program, I'm going to do this weekend. I'm going to read 1 book about writing, or I'm going to write 100 words. And so I'm trying to help people actionify their goal. So people have a really hard time. There's 4 stages of a goal. There's dream, plan, do, review. Those are the 4 stages, and people get stuck. So dreamers get stuck in dream because they have 1,000 ideas, 0 actions. Perfectionists get stuck in plan. They say, Ryan, I'm going to do so many things. As soon as the plan is perfect, I'm going to do so many, and they never do anything. Procrastinators get stuck in do. Like they're always going to do it later. I'm going to do it later, like next year. And then hustlers get stuck in review. A hustler hates to review. I see this with sales guys all the time. Mm-hmm. I work with sales companies and their soundtrack will be, if it didn't happen in Salesforce, it didn't happen. If it didn't happen in our system, it didn't happen, because a sales guy doesn't want to stop and review. They want to just keep going, going, going. So sometimes what I do is figure out, okay, which of the things are they struggling with? They've got 1,000 dreams, but no real actions. And then you go, okay, well, how do we turn that into an action? What does it look like for you to have a series of actions? Because the average person, we did a study, has 22.8 goals. So it's not that they don't have goals. That's
a lot of goals.
Nobody listening to this has ever come to you and gone, Ryan, I love your program. I love what you do. I just don't have a single desire. They usually have too many and they don't know how to prioritize them. So a big thing for me at the beginning is like, you got all these goals. Let's prioritize a couple. Let's experiment for a couple. Let's try a couple. Let's pay attention to what happens. Let's take notes so we learn, and let's build on top of that. And that's a more deliberate pace. And sometimes people have a hard time that it's not dramatic and over the top and they want it to be chaotic. And so I always tell people, like, excellence is boring. Like, we want it to be exciting. Excellence is boring. It's thank you notes. It's follow-ups. It's
Ramsey saying the same thing every day.
It's Ramsey saying the same and staying faithful to that and getting better at it. It's you ask me about somebody I know that you don't know yet. It'll be me following up on that and going, hey, Ryan, I talked to this person. Hey, like, it's those little things that will never
define excellence.
Never make an Instagram. But like, so one of my soundtracks is excellence is boring. And if you're willing to do it, winning's exciting. And so I'm like, all right, well, let me go do the boring stuff that leads to the exciting stuff. And so half of my job is convincing people to do some of the boring stuff, because that's where the good stuff really is.
No, I love that. Yeah, it does get boring. I'm entering year 15 of real estate. Yeah. And I'm just like, yeah. It's a house.
But it's year 1 for a lot of people who've never met you.
Yeah.
So that's I heard Ed Milet was quoting Jim Rohn, and he was like, it's not about saying new things to old people. It's about saying old things to new people.
Yeah.
And you you go, like, you live in Vegas. How does Bono still make one sound interesting? He has sung that song 1,000,000 times.
Yeah.
If he comes out on stage and sings it how he's feeling some days, the fans are going to be disappointed. And if he came out and was like, hey, we're not going to do any of Joshua Tree, it's a new album you've never heard, we're all doing new stuff, people would be furious. You have to remember that as a leader. It's your 15th year. It might be somebody's first minute with Ryan Pineda.
Yeah.
And you got to come in with that kind of energy.
Yeah, exactly. And not let, I mean, this is the hard part too, right? Because there is a, let's just say, an overarching message that is always true, right? Yeah. So like, let's just say we're talking faith. It's like, I know what Jesus has promised. I know that I'm saved. I know like the peace that I have, right? But I might be going through a season.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the truth of the matter. And I have to be able to say, hey, even though I'm going through a season, I still know the joy that comes with following Jesus.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you about it, even though I may not be experiencing it at the highest level I've had before.
Well, one of my soundtracks is not feeling it, still doing it.
Exactly.
Not feeling it, still doing it. So, we talk about this in our family a lot because we talk to our kids about this. Like one of our life principles, if you want a kind 16-year-old, teach a 6-year-old kindness and give them 10 years to practice. So we are thinking about, okay, our 4-year-old, what do we want them to be like at 14? What do we want to give them 10 years to practice compassion, truth, hustle, whatever the word is. And so not feeling it, still doing it is for those seasons when I don't wake up and go, man, I'm ready to conquer the world and I have to hold on to the truth. And it has to be close to me. It has to be where I'm reading it. Like I can't be casual about it because life is really challenging. And if I don't hold on to it, I lose hold of it.
I've been thinking about that a lot too, actually, because my daughter's 4 and she's a nut. She wakes up at 5:30 with me.
Yeah.
She doesn't sleep. And I'm just like, it's crazy. But on the flip side, every morning I'm doing my morning routine. I'm reading my Bible. I'm praying. And she's watched me every day for like the last year doing this. And one day she was like, Dad, I want a Bible.
Yeah.
Like, I want to read with you. And so then we get her this Bible and she like pretends to read and like goes through the Bible.
It was a great day at the house.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about it now as it's just been happening every day. And I'm like, wow, she's going to grow up with this just being a normal thing every day.
Yeah.
You do that from the age of 4. What's she going to become?
Yeah. Well, where I learned that, I worked for Bose, the stereo company. And our challenge at Bose was that when somebody turned 22 and they wanted to buy a stereo with their first adult check, Sony had talked to them since they were 6. So Sony had products for kids. So Sony would sell them a little CD player. This is 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And they would sell them they would sell them stuff for 20 years. And then we would try to introduce ourselves 20 years into their Sony experience. That was a hard conversation. And it's the same thing with parents is, okay, what are the things you want to make normal? What are the things you want to repeat? And what's fun is that you create a family lore. When you're deliberate about your family, you create a family lore, a culture, where if you go to the same place 2 or 3 times, your kids go, we used to always ski. My dad used to, it doesn't take 1,000 times, but it takes you being deliberate. And so we really think about that a lot. I mean, I've got a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old, so I'm on the other side of it. But looking back, I'd go, oh yeah, those are things like if we camp a certain amount of times, they're now campers. And we would look at it and go, like one of our principles was, don't spend a lot of time with people whose only outdoor activity is drinking. Like if the only thing they knew to do outside is drink, and it's, they're doing tailgating and they're like, find people who are hiking, who are kayaking, who are skiing, who are doing like, because the people whose only outdoor activity is drinking are very boring in their late 30s. Like it catches up. Like at 20, it's kind of like the guy in the nightclub in Vegas who's 49. You're like, at 29.
Night at the Roxbury.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think we just, as parents, we're deliberate about that. And then goals are such a big part of how we communicated with our kids. And
I wonder though how much so I agree about being intentional and deliberate. And that's what got me to this point. But a lot of now, like with my kids, it's just kind of like the natural byproduct and the fruit of that. So it's like, I didn't start reading my Bible in the morning so that she could watch me and emulate it.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
But
I would argue that's part of a generous God. Yeah. Like I would argue you didn't do that. He knew that would happen. Right. And so I think there's so many things, if we're honest, as believers, I did this thing expecting this, and then God does it times 10. And you go, I had no idea I'd meet Sean. I had no idea I'd connect with Grant. I had no idea. Like when Pete said to you, Ryan, is this worth a half hour of your time? You didn't go, well, let me pinpoint one of the relationships that are going to happen in 3 years. You go, man,
I'm going to be obedient.
I'm going to be obedient. And I know if I believe God's a good God,
Yeah.
I'm going to see fruit from this.
Yeah, and I think about that too, as now my family is getting older, right? My kids are now starting to, 5, 4, and 1, and hopefully we'll have more, and they're gonna now start to remember things and experience things. And but I just kind of look at the lifestyle we live, and it's not like intentional, it's just kind of like who we are. It's like every weekend, we live on a golf course, and so we take them on the golf cart, and they get to be on the, and I was like, I didn't grow up that way. I didn't even play golf or anything, but like they're going to grow up on a golf course. They're probably going to like golf, I would assume, and remember all those times of just hanging out as a family riding on the course. And like, we go on vacations, and they're going to remember the beach and all this good stuff. But I do think, I guess, like there's two sides to this. It's like, because we were obedient and intentional with just our life before kids, it has translated now to just like this natural thing with kids. And if somebody's listening who's not, it's like, hey, you want your kids to, have good habits, and dude, you better act right first.
Yeah. Well, and I think the pressure to somebody who's listening, like, you don't have to be a perfect parent. Like that's the other thing. And I think it is a tension. You have to both be intentional, but also be flexible. Like, one of the soundtracks I use is plan like an engineer, live like an artist. So plan like an engineer, live like an artist, because life is going to give you opportunities you don't see coming.
Right.
And so where people get wrapped up when it comes to goals is they go, I got to measure this. I got to do everything perfectly. Like, just the other day, I walked downstairs and my wife was like, hey, I need a ride to the mechanic to pick up my car. And because I was kind of in driven goal mode, I said, I think I can fit you in on Thursday. Let's pencil that in. And I was like, that is not the right answer.
Yeah.
She was like, don't goal me. Like, just give me a ride to the mechanic. And so I think that's because I've talked to other people that would say, I was on a podcast the other day, and this guy was saying, well, I measure my time with my kids and da-da-da-da-da. And like, my kids don't want to be measured. My kids don't want to be a goal. They want to be loved.
Yeah.
And so there is that tension of, I'm really intentional, but like, one of my goals is I want to be interruptible. Like, when my kids interrupt me, I want to be interruptible. Like, I don't want to be interruptible for 1,000 people. It's a small circle. But when I'm home, I want to be interruptible. So when they come home from college and I've got 2 weeks with them in December, I'm not going to be in full work mode then.
Yeah.
Even if I'm working half days, I'm going to be interruptible. So the wins that I had recently was my daughter was like, hey, can you play pickleball at 8 a.m. on Monday? And dude, 8 a.m. on Monday is like go time. Like, but I try to do the rare. And it's rare when a kid goes, hey, will you, especially a teenager, hey, will you take me to coffee? Hey, will you hang out? And I'm going to make the rare choice and move my schedule and move the things, because I got a limited window with that. And so that's the flexibility. You're really intentional, but you're also really flexible.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny. My daughter, she's now asked me every morning, like, where I'm going.
Yeah.
Because she's aware. And so this was on Saturday. She goes, hey, Dad, are you going to work? And I don't work on the weekends. I go, no. She goes, huh. Are you going to golf? And I was like, nope. She goes, are we going to church? I was like, nope.
Yep.
And then she was just confused. She's like, so
what are we doing?
Yeah, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I was like, we're just hanging out all day. And she's like, can we go downstairs? And I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
And it was just so funny because, like, once again, back to like your habits, it's like, yeah, she really does see me do 3 different things every morning. And she knows based on my clothes. She looks at my clothes, and
she can tell at golf when you're in golf mode.
Yeah, and she looks at, and I wasn't in any kind of clothes she understood, because I'm just in like gym shorts and a shirt. She's like, what's going on?
You were like casual dad, and that threw her.
Yeah, and because, usually I wear all black to the office, and so she just knows. She's like, you're going to work.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they pay attention, and it only gets more enjoyable as they get older. At the things they notice, the conversations you get to have, it's fun to see the different stages.
Yeah. So let's talk about like rigid goals versus, like you said, like flexible, interruptible goals, because, man, my perception of goals have changed over the years. Like, I've been able to accomplish a lot of things, and my belief now in hindsight, looking back at it, is not because I set big, crazy, rigid goals, but because I was always willing to be flexible and pivot and adapt and like abandon a goal.
Oh yeah.
So how is that supposed to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can hold on to something too long. I mean, you see businesses go out of business all the time because they were unwilling to make a change. Rigid goals are fragile goals. And so a sign that you have a flexible goal is if you're able to do something the day after perfect. So every goal has the day after perfect, where you went to the gym 3 weeks in a row and then you miss one day. And there's a lot of people who they miss the one day and it turns into 3 months. So giving yourself the grace to pick it back up. All resilience is, the definition of resilience is being willing to give yourself the ability to start again. Like to start again. You wouldn't need resilience if you were perfect. You only need resilience when it hasn't worked. So a good sign of a flexible goal is, I didn't meet it perfectly, I'm still doing it. A good sign of a flexible goal is when you give yourself a margin of error. So for instance, one of my goals this year is to spend 1,000 hours outside. There's this woman who did this program.
I've seen that.
It's killing, dude. And so I just decided to try it. And some days
my wife tried it, actually. That's why I saw it.
Nice. Well, I tried it and I was like, you know what? I'm going to make some mistakes this year. So I'm giving myself a 5% rate of error, which is 50 hours. So if I forget to turn the timer on or off or whatever, it doesn't matter. I gave myself a 5% range of error. So even that gives you flexibility. Even that. And then the other thing is being willing to retire goals, to assess and go, okay, quarterly, monthly, whatever, this thing I thought I wanted is an old dream. And I thought I wanted it, and I don't really want it. It was a story I thought, or it came from childhood. It's time for me to retire that. Most people don't retire goals fast enough. They limp them along and don't admit when they're over. I see people all the time ask me, I got 5 books in me, I'm trying to write a book, and I can tell they don't want to write a book. Yeah. But they think they have to write a book. And so sometimes I just give them the permission to go, I think you really love your podcast. And I think you have this pressure that people in your stage have to have a book. I don't know you don't seem, there's no joy. Every time you tell me I got to write a book, it doesn't seem like there's any joy in that. Maybe that's an old goal you need to let go.
I actually have a 3rd book that is already written and has been paid for and everything, and I haven't released it.
Yeah, it's locked and loaded.
Well, I just am like, yeah, you know what? I don't know that I necessarily believe this in its current version anymore.
It might not be the season, or it might not be the iteration.
And I don't want to promote it. I don't want to do any of these things.
You know the work. It's not like a weekend where you just send a book out. The level you're going to do it at will be heavy lifting for you and the whole team. Yeah. And so you as a leader are going, I'm not going to do it as an ego thing. The older you get, the more you make decisions on ROI, not EGO. Like, I'm always going, what's the ROI?
I'm like, what is EGO?
Like, ROI, not ego. We're like a book tour, an example. Yeah. I don't do book tours anymore because they're great for my ego. They're bad for my business. Because what happens is there's not a lot of people that show up. Say 50 people show up, but they show up with a book they already bought. And so then the bookstores really put out because all these people bring books they bought from Amazon to the Barnes & Noble. And the Barnes & Noble, rightfully so, is like, hey, thanks for making us host an event that didn't sell any books. Yeah. And so it's fun for your ego, but it doesn't really sell any books. There's not a good return on investment. There's other ways I'd rather serve the audience. But when I was a young man, I was probably more likely to go, man, I can't wait to post. I'm in Dallas. Look at me in Dallas. And like, it's the photo in the bookstore. And now I'm like, I don't think that's helping people the way I want to help them. Right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one thing I've been thinking about with my goal setting and habits over the years is like, I don't really set too many number-based goals anymore. And I used to teach that. And I still don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's just maybe a season that I am in where I'm just more so committed to the daily process. Yeah. Every day. And, you know, it's like that saying that the journey is the real reward. It's not the destination. And it's like, I just feel like I'm on a journey and I'm committed to a process that I don't know where it leads. And so it's like, and part of that process is just faith and following what God is calling me to do. And so I just kind of look at that and it's like, on one hand, I'm still unsure of where it leads. On the other hand, I don't want to limit what God could do. Sure. And I'm completely content just knowing that, hey, you know what? Today I followed the process. I was obedient. I did what I needed to do today. It's all good. But then, you know, you do run the risk of like maybe kind of like running aimlessly and you don't want to do that. And so I don't know, like I don't know that I have the answer that it's correct, but I'm happy with where I'm at.
Yeah. The way I say it is I'm the CEO of my actions, not the CEO of my outcomes.
Exactly.
So I'm the CEO of my actions. And so if I focus on the action and I go, I'm going to plant today, I'm going to water today, I'm going to do the things, then I don't have to go, and this is exactly what will happen. Because the best things that have happened to me, I didn't force. I didn't say, like working for Dave Ramsey fast forwarded my career by 10 years. I didn't come up with a plan when I started a blog and I was like, I bet in 3 years, a guy who works at his company I've never met will recommend I speak there. And then over a 3-year process, I'll work there. That's not how it worked. It was, I wrote a lot of words on a blog. I was faithful to the action. So the older I get, I'm the same as you, where it's like, I want to steward the gift to the best of my abilities. I want to be a double the gift guy. Like, I don't want to bury it.
And maybe it happens too when you've achieved maybe a result-based success that you wanted. You know, especially when it comes to money and maybe status or wealth. It's like, I'm sure you had this goal to become a New York Times bestseller.
Totally.
And you're like, dude, I got to do this. You know, I'm committed. And then maybe after that, it was like, all right, you know, obviously I want to do it again, but like it's not, maybe in my mind, it won't have as much meaning.
I think it has to shift, and it should shift as you get older and mature, and there's things you care about at 48 that you didn't care about at 28 and vice versa. And so I think, but I do think that you just have to be careful not to get obsessed with the final thing, because it's really empty when you get there if you idolize it. You can look at it, like say like, I want to grow the company, I want to have 1,000 employees. You're right, like there can be a healthy version of that. But I think that if you set a money goal specifically and you acquire it, what then? You either have to go, well, now I'm going to double it, or you go, well, it really wasn't that fulfilling. Where I want a life where I'm pouring out what I'm capable of. I'm in motion. I've got a wife who loves me. I've got kids who want to spend time with me when they don't have to. I've got all these other metrics that, again, the people I look up to, I go, oh, they've got that. Like if your business is wildly successful, but you're on your 10th marriage, that's not what I'm aiming for.
No.
And so for me, there's other metrics. I couldn't put a number on my marriage. I couldn't say like, okay, this is the amount, like if we spend this amount of time together, I will have hit my goal.
Yeah.
For me, it's more about the action. And I think you're right. I would never say to somebody who has a money goal, I want to get out of debt, here's my number. Oh, you shouldn't have a number. Like totally, go have a number. That can be a good early goal. But I think hopefully you fall in love with the action and the rhythm. The rhythm over time, the lifestyle of it, that's going to sustain you, not the specific number.
Yeah, it's not, all right, cool, now I got to get to this, and then I get to this.
When you never stop, and you've met the same people I have where like you go, oh man, they're still on the grind. Like they can't admit for a second they're successful. Like I have a theory that high performers are talk the worst of themselves of all people. Like I meet high performers all the time that are using shame and anger and insecurity as their fuel, and it'll get you a little place. Like it'll get you somewhere. Like it will, but it won't sustain you long term. And you meet people that are 70 and successful and still grinding, and they can't admit they've done well, and they can't enjoy it for a second because they've used beating themselves up as a form of motivation, or they're trying to prove themselves to their dad, and the dad's been dead for 20 years, and you go, no, you need a different fuel. Like this is not... like you're in a Lamborghini, but it's not enjoyable. Like, how do we do both? I think you can be high performing and high peace. I think you can.
I feel like I have that, right? And it's funny. I remember meeting one of my friends a couple of years ago, and I'll never forget because he got really offended by it. He's like, yeah, so I need to do 100 and I don't even remember the number, so I'm just gonna make it up. But it was like 143,200,000 by January 1st, 2028. I was like, huh, that's interesting. So why? I was like, I'm genuinely curious, like how you came up with that. And he's like, well, I don't need to like have a reason why. And I was like, no, I don't think you understand what I'm asking. Like, I'm curious, like, what was your thought process?
How'd you get there?
And he's like, well, the way I'm going to get there is this year we're going to do 30 million. Next year we're going to do 50. No, I'm like, no. I think you're missing the point. Like,
I'm not asking mechanics.
I understand the growth of how it could happen, but I just want to know, where did this hyper specific number on this date so far into the future come from? And so then like, he didn't really have a great answer. And then as we were talking about it, I go, but like, I just can't get past how you came up with that. I was like, how? That's because he was so motivated by it. And I was like, but what happens if, you want to do something else with your life in the next 5 years? Like, what do you you're just going to, he's like, I'm committed to this no matter what, thick and through. And I was just like, he was so committed to the goal. And I was like, dude, that might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And like, this guy had a, business that's already doing like 30 million.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know how else to say this. I think that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. How do you receive that?
he's just like, we started to get deeper into it.
Yeah.
But it's just funny because I've always said like things that I just truly believe, whether somebody's ahead of me or not.
Yeah.
I'm like, that makes no sense what you're saying. But I think he had a as we like actually got deeper into it, he's like, well, this happened in my life and then that fuels me. And I think it was more so like spite and revenge to achieve a certain goal. And there's a lot of people like that. And I always see it with people who have daddy issues, trying to prove their father wrong, prove this person wrong. And that never ends well.
No, it doesn't end well, and you don't enjoy it on the way. Like, that's the thing. You don't enjoy the win because somebody who's motivated that way can't stop for a second and admit it worked because they're on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And you don't...
They always have a chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, they don't enjoy it as they go, and often the person isn't even watching you the way you think they're watching you. Like, they don't even remember that. It's kind of like, you don't want to be at 50 and trying to get in shape because of an ex-girlfriend from high school. Like, that's a weird... If somebody said to you, Ryan, I'm doing...
But there are people who unknowingly are that way.
Well, if you haven't spent the time to kind of plumb the depths of your heart, like that's the other thing. Like you were asking him a heart question. He kept giving you head answers.
Yeah.
And that's where the disconnect was. He kept going, but no. And he wasn't engaging with that part of him. And I think that's hard for a lot of people. And for me, like, there's a reason I go to counseling. There's a reason I talk to wise people. I guarantee you have someone that asks you questions like that. Like, because one of the consistencies to people that are high performing that fall is that they can't be told the truth. Like, one of the things I say is leaders who can't be questioned end up doing questionable things. Like, if you show me a business that underperformed, you show me a church that imploded, I'll show you a leader who is isolated and couldn't be told the truth. And so we need people like that to go, but why? Like, and if there's a great why, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Or what's the motivation? Or when will you know it worked? How are you going to celebrate this? How will your team celebrate it? Like, because a lot of times a leader like that passes down that go to their team, and the team never gets to celebrate it. Or they go, hey, we hit our goal of 50 million. Here's a cake. Enjoy your 9-minute cake. We're going to do a celebration, and then back to work. And that's not a culture that's sustainable either.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. And even for me, like, I still have a tough time celebrating. Like, oh, we had a great month.
I'm not great at it.
Yeah, like I don't. And honestly, too, part of it is because I'm not focused on the result.
Yeah.
It's just like, all right, cool. Like, I'm still
but as a lead, that's where I'm sure you're working on this. Like, for me, it's as a leader, what will this do for the people that I'm leading? How will they feel? Like, they'll feel seen.
Yeah.
They'll feel that I know, like, because I had a business coach say, like, what did you do to celebrate your book that you wrote? And I was like, nothing. It's my job. What are you talking about? Like, an accountant shouldn't have a party when they do tax season. And he was like, dude, and you know where I failed on that? The last book, I wrote a book with my daughters called How Teens Win. And we wrote it together. It's a motivational book for teenagers. And I remember we were in Birmingham, Alabama at their college, and they were like, we're going to do a book launch party, right? And I was like, no, this is our second book together. I was kind of like, no, we write books. Like, this is the family business. Let's go. And I realized, oh, I should have done that for them.
Yeah,
I was leading them in that moment.
Yeah.
And just because this is my 10th book, it's their second. It's a big deal as an 18-year-old, as a 19-year-old, to have a book on a shelf that's selling tens of thousands of copies. I did a bad job not recognizing I need to celebrate that.
And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about, this is your 15th year of real estate.
Yeah.
Could be somebody else's first day.
Some employee here has been here 6 months, and this experience, it's your 8th WealthCon. It's their first. And they're like, this is insane.
Yeah.
And part of your job as a leader, I think, is to be the most excited. Like, no one will ever be more excited than you. You can't ask anybody on your team to go, I need you to be here, I'll be here. You have to be here so they can be here. So excitement's one of those things that I'm like, how do I be deliberate about that in an authentic way, in an honest way? I'm not manufacturing anything, but how do I recognize that excitement's part of leadership sometimes?
Yeah, and I think also too, it's like, even if you're so focused on maybe the process, which I think is good, you should also be aware of the fruit that the process should yield.
Yeah.
And you should be, fruit should be celebrated.
Yeah, 100%. I'm gonna talk you into a massive Christmas party. I feel like this is awesome.
There we go.
Yeah, let's.
Well, actually, I take everyone to Cancun.
See, you're already doing it. You said it. I love that. I love a guy who goes, yeah, I could do a better job celebrating. Oh, also, I take everybody.
Yeah,
to
we go to Cancun in December.
Dude, come on. See, you're already doing it.
Yeah,
like that's what How long have you done that? A couple years now?
I've been doing a company retreat since 2018.
Yeah. So like you're 6 years in.
Yeah.
I love that. So yeah, you're already practicing this stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's fun.
You just forget.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, oh yeah, we do that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I do take the company to Cancun. Yeah. That's so great, dude.
So what else with goals are there that people just are unaware of?
Like where do they get stopped or where do they get stuck?
I guess, why do people quit in 2 weeks?
Often it's the wrong goal. They inherited a goal. They thought like they see somebody on Instagram and go, I got to grow a business like that, or I got to do this type of exercise. Sometimes they don't know that they have permission to enjoy the goal. So you meet people with fitness goals and they'll say, John, I'm going to get in shape. And I'll go, what are you going to do? And they'll say, I'm going to run. And I'll go, do you like running? And they go, no, I hate it, but I know it's good for me. Mm-hmm. I know you're going to quit. So they don't have a goal they enjoy enough to actually spend time doing because they grew up with an idea that if you enjoy it, it must not count. Mm-hmm. Or if you enjoy it, it's not hard enough. So sometimes they've picked the wrong goal from the very beginning. Sometimes they're trying to do it in isolation.
Right.
And they need people around them to encourage them. And they need somebody to, show them the way. And they're trying to do it all alone. So those are things, I think that's part of why people quit. And then often they're not tracking the results, so they never see progress. Progress you don't measure doesn't exist. Failure is neon. Progress is very small. Like you have to look, you never have to search for failure. You have to search for progress. Like another way I say it is like fear comes free, hope takes work. Fear comes free. You never have to go look for it. It'll find you. Hope, progress, you have to look for it. So sometimes it's as simple as going, well, how far have you come? And they don't know because they didn't do the task of going, I read this book, I wrote 100 pages, I made 50 calls, like, look where I've come from. It's the whole Dan Sullivan, like, gap in the gain. They're looking at how far away they are from the final, but they're not looking back at, look how far I've come. So it's a million little things like that. Another reason they fail is they plan at the wrong time. Great years are built in November, not January. Like a lot of people wait till the last week of December when they're on vacation. And when you're on vacation, you have all the time in the world. And so they come up with 50 goals. And then they get to the first week of January where the real world comes back and they don't have any time. Like I remember I was coaching a commercial real estate guy and I said, what's your goal? He said, I want to do 100 sales calls a week. And I was like, amazing goal, big, audacious, let's go. And I said, how many do you do a week right now? He said, 5. I said, okay, so you're going to 20x your result. That's big, that's a lot. I said, how many hours would that take a week for you to do? And he said, about 25 hours a week. I said, how many hours of free time do you have right now in your week? He said, free time? What are you talking about? I'm very busy. He had a goal that cost 25 hours. He had a week that tolerated 0 hours.
Yeah.
So most people have divorced themselves from their calendar.
They don't even realize it's not possible.
They don't even realize that's possible. They've already set themselves up for failure. And so a guy like that, I'd say, what if we went from 5 to 10? And we did that successfully for 4 weeks and we got some wins and some momentum. Then we double it again. Go from 10 to 20. Like by the end of the year, he's making a ton of calls, but he thinks he has to go from 5 to 100 because he read a book that was exciting. He saw somebody on Instagram say, really go for it. And so sometimes it's that. It's just a matter of going, like even a time gap analysis of the thing I want to do would cost this amount of hours.
Yeah.
Here's where those hours are coming from. I'm going to do it. The thing you have to know is joy beats discipline. Joy beats discipline every day. Nobody wakes up and goes, I think I'm going to be persistent today. I'm going to have grit today. I just
I'm going
think
to have perseverance
I'm going to have perseverance today. What happens is you find something that's worth changing. You go.
You enjoy the struggle.
Well, but you go like, if I do this, I get this. This is worth it. For me with a blog, what changed my life was I started to blog on a whim and it started to grow and I started to have a little momentum. That's what made me stop watching TV so much. Not that I got disciplined, but I said, TV's giving me nothing. Like if I watch less TV, I get to write more.
Yeah.
And the writing more was more joy. So I always tell people like joy is the best alarm clock.
No, that makes sense. Like even for me, reading my Bible every morning is out of joy.
Yeah.
It's like, no, I want to do this.
You
like,
want to create time for it.
Yeah.
Now it's weird if you don't. Like the days you don't get to do it, now you feel like, I feel a little uncomfortable.
But maybe there's people who are like, they set a goal. Hey, dude, I know I'm supposed to read my Bible. Like, I'm going to just do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, obviously it's better than not trying.
Yeah.
But the heart behind it maybe might not be correct.
Well, in that moment, what I would try to get that person to do is I would say, where do you connect with God best? Like, that's where I wouldn't go, how do you force this? I'd go, where do you connect with God best? And if they were like, man, I really like worship music is the thing that, or like, man, when I go on a hike and I get to pray, like I would find something, I would find their version of joy. Eventually that would turn into Bible reading.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't start by going, well, I know you don't connect that way, but you got to do it this way. This is the one solution. That's a rigid goal.
Maybe we'll hike however many times a week, once a week, whatever. But and bring your Bible on the hike.
Or this friend, you've got a friend who's really great at interpreting the Bible.
Yeah.
Go have coffee with them. Like find the joyful way to do it. That's your version versus going, I must be a failure because I don't feel joy immediately. Like I would try to
This is why workout partners help.
Exactly. Or a workout you like. If you don't like running, never run. Like
I'm with you. You're a runner.
Yeah, I like running.
I have never been a runner.
Yeah, but I would never
will.
say to you, Ryan, it's the only form of exercise that counts. There's people that are like, I love jujitsu. I'm like, that's amazing. Like, go do jujitsu. There's people that are like, I love cycling. Like, I don't like any sport that involves getting hit by a car fairly regularly. Like, I have a friend who got hit 4 times by cars.
That's crazy.
Until eventually his parents gave him a mountain bike and had an intervention. So I always joke with my cycling friends, like, and when you talk to one, they don't even tell the story dramatically. They go, yeah, I got hit by a car the other day. Because they're used to it. Like, dude, if I got hit by a car, I would text you and be like, Ryan, I need some prayer. I got hit by a car.
Yeah,
I'm also retiring from cycling.
Yep.
Like, I'm out. So, like, I just think you have to find your version of it. And again, that circles back to flexibility. But you won't know immediately. So that's where the experiment comes in of, I tried these 3 things. Man, I love this one. I hated these other 2. I'm not going to do them. I'm going to do more. I'm going to double down on this one. I'm going to triple down on this one. I'm going to go all in. Like you guys are doing events where you're like, man, the Kingdom event, we're really feeling that. Like, let's
run more of those.
Let's run more. You didn't know until you tried it. And now you've tried it. You've paid attention to the results. You've paid attention to what it does to the team and the audience. And you're like, what if we went in? Like, what if we leaned in 2025 on this? What could happen? That's where it gets exciting.
Mm-hmm. But you got to test.
You got to test.
And most people are not even willing to do that.
Well, I think they're afraid it won't be perfect. It won't be fast.
It won't be.
No, it won't.
It won't be any of those things.
No, and like you won't. And that's the other thing is that online we see a lot of afters. We see some befores. We don't see a lot of middles. So like that's where like people that ask me how to write a book are often disappointed by my answer. Like I've spent 400 hours this year and it took me 400 hours to get to the right word, the right topic. Like I've thrown away 100,000 words this year. I gave my wife 17 chapters, like 100 hours in, and she read them and like 2. She's like, these other ones are not good. And I was like, that wasn't fun for me. But I know now I've done it long enough that I know it's a 1,000-hour process. So I don't beat myself up at hour 200.
Yeah.
I don't beat myself up at hour 300, but I didn't start with 1,000 hours. If you said to me on day 1, John, it's going to take you 1,000 hours to write this book, that would be demoralizing and discouraging. I'd never tell somebody who wanted to be a speaker, it's going to take you 15 years to get to where you want your fees and get the events you want. I'd never say that. I'd go, hey, let's do that first free speech at a nursing home because there's a captive audience there that wants to hear encouragement. You can go in there for free. You can get a rep. Let's just do that. Let's go encourage 20 elderly people for 20 minutes on a topic you're curious about. And let's just see if you like it. Let's practice that. Like I like easy on-ramps.
Yeah.
Goals fail when you give yourself a mountain to climb the first day. I like an easy on-ramp. And sometimes high performers feel guilty about that because they want to go. But if I can convince them to like, nah, we're gonna do an easy on-ramp, see how we build this.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think, there's so many takeaways from it, but I never thought about the aspect of doing something that's joyful. Yeah. I mean, clearly, if you love doing it, like for me, I think you mentioned that high performers got to like start doing something that they suck at and rise to the top. Maybe you said hustlers are the people who do that. And so I was like, oh yeah, that was golf for me. I'm like, oh man, like I just want to be so good at this. Yeah. And so like I practice every day in my simulator.
Real estate investors, I found a brand new way to create cash flow that's better than anything else I've ever done. It's better than rental properties, Airbnb, my flipping business, multifamily. It's the best thing we've done yet. It is building an automated wholesale business. Now you might be saying, Ryan, how do you build an automated wholesale business? Well, what if you had the same exact leads that I get every single month? What if you had a sales script that was so easy to close deals over the phone that you could do it all across the country? And what if you could sell your deals directly on the MLS without a real estate license and without having to actually own the property and getting top dollar? Well, we do that with this new method. And I made an 11-minute video where I go over how it all works, how you can start doing it today. So if you want to go see that video, go to wealthyinvestor.com, go click the case study and see what I'm talking about.
But see, dude, your desire was ahead of your excellence, and you got to give your excellence time to catch up. So you came day one. I'm Ryan Pineda. I don't do things casually.
Yeah, I go all in.
I don't do them poorly. My definition isn't it's average. I want to be excellent. Your desire was ahead of your excellence. And then you had to have the patience, the time, the repetition to allow that excellence to catch up with the desire. The desire was there day one.
Yeah.
Dude, you knew the first time you put on golf shoes, like, I want to crush this ball.
Yeah.
Like, I want to, like, and I can, and you knew intellectually how to do it. That's the other thing. I know what it takes to build a business. I know what it takes to whatever, but it takes a while for excellence to catch up. And that's where you need to kind of close that gap. And the middle of the ladder is challenging unless you have small steps to take and you get to win every day. I try to win every day. I don't delay wins at all. Like people go, the problem with books like that people like me write is they go, you have two options, instant gratification or delayed gratification. And I'm like, nah, daily gratification is a lot more fun. I'm winning all the time on small little things that keeps me motivated. So that's how, like, golf is the same way. I guarantee you might not have written them down, but you had small games you were playing with yourself every day to go.
Oh yeah, my handicap, whether I practice. For 1 year, one of my daily habits that I was tracking was whether I practiced or not.
Yeah, yeah, and that was a win.
Yeah,
and if you did it, like, you weren't measuring, here's what my score was, here's what, like, I'm sure you were, but you also had daily wins where you're like, dude, if I practice today, huge win, huge win. So I think that's what, when high performers get together, if you ask to see their playbook, they got a lot of games they're playing. They got a lot of little things they're doing, and they'll go, well, you know, if I share this, I'm going to look a little weird. Like, I'm doing things all the time that, like, if somebody who wasn't interested in goals, they would think it was a little weird, but I'm loving it. Like, life can be really fun, and I think it can be really enjoyable when you're in motion and when you're deliberate.
So joyfulness of the goal, reframing it to a joyful way is important. I'm also hearing that logically look at the goal if it's even possible.
Yeah.
And does it align with maybe the other parts of your life that are goals? So here's a big problem I see with business people. This is why I wrote the book Wealthy Way, is that people are like, well, dude, I want to become a millionaire.
Yeah.
You know, and I know I'm going to have to grind 80 hours a week to get there. Like, I know I'm going to have to do this. And I'm like, well, first off, you don't. Like, you could just be better.
Yeah,
business.
Let's start there.
You first off, you're already wrong in that assumption. But let's just say even that was true, and you had to do that in order to achieve this goal. Well, how does that align with the rest of your life? Well, you know, now I'm not going to see my wife and my kids, and you know, I'm not going to be able to, you know, spend time on my faith and my health and everything else. And it's like, okay, so we now understand the cost.
Yeah.
Okay, these are the costs, and let's just say you were able to achieve that goal. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
And
is that trade-off worth it?
Yeah, because there's always a trade-off. Because even when I was thinking about the guy, you looked at it a different way than how I would have looked at it. With the guy who wanted to make 100 sales calls.
Yeah.
I would have looked at it and said, okay, you want to do 100 sales calls? I would have first jumped to the same conclusion you said. Okay, like, what's the cost?
Yeah.
How many hours is this going to take? Okay, 25 hours. All right. So where are those coming from?
Yeah.
Right? Are you going to add 25 hours to your work week and therefore take it from something else in your life?
That's real time. It's coming from somewhere.
You can't just add 25 hours to your week. It's impossible. You got to take from something else. So are you going to take it from family, friends, whatever? Are you going to delegate some stuff off in your business? Like, is there anything right now that you do that's, how many hours a week do you spend on emails? How many hours a week do you spend just driving?
Do you have a great personal assistant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, maybe we can hit it right now because maybe there's some very easy delegatable things right out the gate. You know, and so like, it's just important to know you first must know the cost. Yeah. And then once you know the cost, say, okay, well, is it worth it?
Yeah. And part of it too is stage of life. That's the other thing was, like, taking goal advice and making it custom to you. I tell people all the time that most advice is a la carte. You should pick the pieces that work for where you are and apply it. So I'm 48. My kids are 19 at 21. I didn't write the way I write now when they were 4 and 6. I remember, dude. I remember it was a Saturday when my kids dropped their afternoon nap. My wife, like I went to go to my office. I was like, hey, I'm going to write some. She goes, no. And I was like, no, I'm during their nap. I'm going to write. And she's like, they don't take a nap anymore. And I was like, did we get to vote on that? Was there a family? And she's like, no, the nap's over. And I remember being like, oh, the shape of our weekends just changed. Okay. And so
I vividly remember that too.
Yeah.
Because that was when I would leave to go golf.
Yeah, totally. And
I'm like, all right, cool,
one day
sleeping.
they're like,
I'm out.
Yeah. And one day they're like, nah, it's over, Dad. That's a wrap.
I'm like, dude, do I got to bring these kids now?
Yeah.
And that's actually what happened.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, here's the cost, right? I just go golf and my wife is going to be really mad at me.
Yeah. I don't want to pay that price.
Or I can keep golfing and I bring them with me.
Yeah.
And at the time, my wife didn't golf or anything. And I was like, babe, you're going to love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Outside,
just
it's gorgeous.
It's going to be great family.
Yeah.
I'm going into marketing and sales mode.
Sure.
I'm like, think about all the family time. We're going to be, isn't your goal 1,000 hours outside?
Yeah.
Let's get 2 of them
Look
right
at
here.
it. Yeah. Yeah. So totally. So I think it's stage of life too. And that's where like when somebody's in their mid 20s and they're asking me about work-life balance, I'm like, no, dude. I'm like,
bro, you don't even have anything going on.
I was like, you got no kids, no wife, like,
bro,
like no husband. I'm like, dude, this is go time. Don't.
I know.
Like,
anytime I meet a young guy who's like, bro, I'm pretty busy. I'm like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah, there's more. Go.
Explain to me what you do all day.
Yeah.
Well, I wake up at like, 8, 9 o'clock. I go to bed late because I'm playing freaking whatever people play these days.
Yeah.
All right, what else do you do? Yeah. Well, I work out. That takes like 2 hours. I'm like, what do you do in the gym for 2 hours?
Yeah, because
you ain't in shape. I don't see it. Yeah. What are you doing?
Yeah, all triceps. I'm just focusing on triceps.
I'm like, where are the 2 hours every day? Clearly something's not adding up.
When I give people advice like that, it's usually not well received because they'll go, hey, I've got these 2 opportunities. And I always go, do both. I think you can do both.
Yeah.
And they're like, do both. I couldn't. I'm like, you can. You have the most energy you've ever had and the most time.
I know.
I'm like, dude, do both.
So
I'm kind of like that.
I'm kind of like the bearer of bad news. I was actually telling a guy this on his podcast because he's 28, single Christian guy.
Yeah.
Running a business, being successful, in the process of, he's dating a girl, deciding if he wants to get married. And, I've had a lot of single guys in our office and stuff. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, guys, you have more time in your life than it's only going to get harder.
Yeah.
And I say this on stage at WealthCon too. I'm like, guys, you need to start this now. Yeah. This isn't to like buy my stuff. I'm just telling you, you better start now.
Yeah.
It will not get any easier than it is today. But I got this big thing going. Like once that's done, I'm like, no. Right now is the easiest time in your life.
Yeah.
And I start to explain it and I go, okay, let's just think, for example, right? As you get older, do you somehow feel better? You have more energy?
Your knees work better in your 50s? Is that how knees work?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like it.
No, that doesn't happen. Okay, so we know your body decays as you get older. All right, so that's clear. You guys don't have kids yet? You're not married? Yeah. Well, let me tell you. Let me give you a lesson. When you first get married, now all of a sudden you don't get to do whatever you want.
It goes from me to we.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
Yep. And now I have other obligations and other things that are more important than my own selfish desires. Yeah. And then, I have a kid. Like, dude, I have like a newborn. I'm like, oh, cool, man. Imagine when you have a newborn and a kid and another kid. Yeah. It ain't getting any easier.
No. And for me, like I remember when we got married, Jenny was like, hey, let's go to my nephew's birthday party. And I was like, ooh, nephew, that's a side character.
Yeah,
how old is he, 2? He's not going to know I'm there.
Bro, I don't know how many baby parties I've been to on the weekends.
So I was like, but that's like, now we're a we, and now we're going. And the one thing I'll say to people is I'll go, Warren Buffett would trade every dollar he has right now for what you have, which is time.
Exactly.
At 27, you have, so like, what does that look like? How do you, and then I'm always trying to get people to like hook up your future self. 10 years from now, what is future you going to be so glad you did today? Like, what are the things, not later, but what are the things right now? And I had a handful of guys. I took some of that advice in my 20s, not as much as I wish I had taken, but I had a handful of guys in my life that would go, hey man, this is like, you should blog. You should do you have a full-time day job. You have 2 kids under the age of 4. You have a long commute. Like, dude, I started practicing my speeches when I worked at Auto Trader, had no time. I would practice them in the car on the way to work out loud. So I would give them to the steering wheel because I had no other hour in my day where I could practice a speech.
Right.
And so I just started to reclaim time and go, I got to get it. And so now if I can help somebody who's 23, 25, 30 that is just curious, I'm the don't wait guy. I'm like, and I like, you can often see their eye, like they're kind of like, whoa, this is intense. Cause I'm like, don't wait.
Yeah, bro. And even like, okay, for them, right? Any person in their 20s, just go. Like, and if you're scared, you're a loser. So that's one. Then, you know, you got the people in their 30s and 40s who actually do have now like they understand. They're like, bro, like I got kids, I got a wife, I got like I can't just quit my job to pursue, like I have now. You said seasons of life, and it's like, yeah, for sure, they have more to lose. Like they can't take as much risk as the person in their 20s. And it's like, I feel you, dude, but just remember, this is still the easiest time in your life.
Yeah.
Because 5 years from now, what, you think all of a sudden it's going to get easier?
Yeah. There's no time in your life where you get more time in a sense. Like people say they'll go, when things aren't so busy, then I always go, oh, I have bad news. They're going to be busy. Like they're going to, like right now. So I'm in a different stage of life with kids. So my incorrect thought was once they're out of the house, that part of parenting.
You now have a lot of time.
Dude, we go to Birmingham. They're both in school in Birmingham, Alabama. We go to Birmingham all the time. Like they're both in a sorority. We go for dad's weekend and parents weekend. Like we give them advice. Like my oldest daughter she just got an internship with an accounting firm. We walked her through that process because that was another stage. There's not a stage where it's always easy or always open. But I think if you said a 36-year-old, they've got 2 kids, they've got a wife, they've got the stuff, and they want to try something else, that's when I go start reclaiming time. The easiest, fastest way is go to Screen Time and steal some back from your greediest app. Like if you tell me you're busy and then you're like, you did 13 hours on Instagram last week, you worked for free for Instagram. They paid you $0.
Yep.
And so if you cut that in half, you just got 6 hours to build the business, to do the goal, whatever the thing is you want to do. People don't like to hear that 2 things can be true at the same time. You have less time than you think, you have more time than you think. And that's a back and forth.
True.
It's a back and forth. And it's your job. Like another thing I say is time is our most valuable resource, but it's also our most vulnerable. It can't protect itself. It can only do one thing. It flows. That's all time knows how to do. We have to protect it. So we have to be the one. I guarantee I've now, this is such a simple hack. I decided there are people who need to connect with me that are a phone call as I drive somewhere. They're a pre-haircut phone call. Like I know you took it to the next level. They come to you. But like for me, I go, this client is really important. I got to be in my office. They're getting prime time, gold time. This is important. Somebody who's like, I want to pick your brain and I need to maintain the relationship. I go, I'll call you from the airport. Like it's going to be a little loud, but or somebody will go, hey, I'd really love to see you. And I go, that's not a coffee. That's a phone call or it's a walk. And so being deliberate about no, how do I reclaim that time? For 10 years, I didn't notice I had a half hour as I drove to the haircut. And then I was like, wait a second, there's a half hour there. And if I'll go find it, I can reclaim it. I can get something done. And again, I'm still really open with family time. I'm not measuring. If I said to Jenny, we have 11 minutes to connect, that's what I got scheduled. She would go I'm not a goal, I'm your wife.
Yeah.
I'm not and so it is that balance. But that's what I love to do with dudes that are in their 30s is go, all right, well, let's look at your calendar. Let's just get in there and see, when somebody tells me the 42 TV shows they watch, or I go,
oh boy,
I know where to get it.
I haven't seen that new Netflix. No, I haven't.
Or I love when people go, the first 7 seasons aren't good, but by season 8, and you're like, dude, this is a 180 episode commitment. This thing,
I'm an anime guy, so I have seen a lot of anime, but people are like, bro, you got to watch Naruto. And I'm like, bro, Naruto has 800 episodes.
Yeah.
I'm not starting.
You're just not even opening that door, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's
I'm
video
not even
games.
starting it.
If I got a video game system, I'm out. I know myself. I can be compulsive.
Yeah.
So if I had an Xbox, a PS5, and if that's your hobby, kind of quiet time, whatever, no shame there. But for me, it would turn compulsive and I would give it more hours than it deserved. And so I don't open that door.
I don't really know anyone though, video game wise, that it isn't a problem.
Well, it's designed to be a problem.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know anyone who it's yeah, dude, I'm good playing video games a couple hours a week. I've never heard that.
I do 15 minutes a day, and I'm very structured.
Yeah, that doesn't exist.
That
You'll never beat it.
No, that doesn't. Yeah, it's not a 9-year video game you casually do. Yeah.
Well, and now the video, I guess, like, I haven't played video games in so long, but it's like you used to beat video games. There was a conclusive beginning and end. Now it's like every game is just like playing against each other all the time.
Now you are the video game.
Yeah.
Like you used to beat them and feel like I finished Zelda. And it's like, oh,
it was great.
Congratulations. Check. Like I did Zelda.
Like I don't have to play it ever again. But it's like,
so
now you play Fortnite forever.
But that's part of, to me, that's part of going, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? So I know for me, I don't have to guess if that's a potential weakness. Like when we got married, we didn't have kids. We got a PlayStation 2, and I played a lot of Grand Theft Auto. And my wife wasn't like, this seems like a good use of your time. Like, I'm so glad we got married.
I'm glad you do this.
I'm glad you do this. This is making you better. You know? And so, like, knowing that about me, it's like, okay, I don't have to go back down that path. I've already figured that out. Like, that's a guardrail for me. It's like, that's a guardrail. I don't need to open that door.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. What do you think about just all the people who don't know what goal to hit, right? Like, because a lot of people are walking around saying, man, like, I want to make more money. Man, I want to have a better marriage. Man. And they just literally don't know what to do. And so they can't even set a goal. They can't even take the first step.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I wrote the book is for that person to go like, hey, here's the process. But if you were, say you had a desire to do something different, an easy way to start is to find somebody who's good at that in your circle and ask them a few questions. Now that takes bravery. All the stuff we're talking about, you don't get to stay the same. So let's just be clear. Like, there's times when I've been like, even to God, where I've been like, hey, I would love tremendous growth. I don't want it to take time, and I don't want to be uncomfortable. And what I've learned, one of my soundtracks now is the goal is growth, not comfort. So it's always like, if I want something different, it's always a little uncomfortable because I'm changing and stretching. So for somebody that said, I want a better marriage, I want to make a little more money, a relationship is a great place to start. Like, take out somebody who's 10 years ahead of you to coffee and say, hey, what are the things that when you were my age, you wish you did? Or here's the desire I have. What do you think? Or even just say, I'm going to give 15 minutes to it today. And I'm going to, I don't know. I think a lot of times in situations like that, they're looking for a perfect goal. And I think that, like, we want a soulmate, we want the one thing. It's never just one thing. I see people all the time will go, hey, and I'm sure this happens at WealthCon. Somebody will go, Ryan, Q&A, how do you find amazing people to hire? And they want you to give them a silver bullet.
That happens every,
And you're like, man, it's not a silver bullet. And you try to give them enough of the thing to start the thing, but not the full thing because it'll be discouraging.
Yeah.
So you go, well, I found that great people know great people. So one of the things we've had a lot, like, you give them an answer, but they want a silver bullet. So I try to help people go, I'm not looking for a silver bullet. I think I want to write a book. So here's what I'm going to do. And again, it gets back to that, like, it's a small thing. But then also, like, some people are addicted to chaos. Like, some people,
they just love drama.
They love the drama. We all have friends that are chaos monsters, and they go, why do these things keep happening to me? And you go, I know why they keep happening. Yeah, it's you. And so, like, the other thing is some people practice stress and confusion and fear. And so, like, people
that's their comfort zone.
That's their
chaos. If they have peace, they're like, dude,
they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It feels. And so, like, the joke I sometimes do is, like, people go, John, I feel negative. And I'll go, well, tell me about your day. And they go, I got up a little late because I stayed up late last night. And then I listened to a podcast as I drove to work called Brutal Unsolved Crimes in Your Neighborhood. And then I complained with people who hate their job. And then I got home and I went on Nextdoor app and complained with neighbors about mailbox colors and coyotes. And then I fell asleep to my favorite Netflix show called People Who Look Like You Getting Brutally Murdered. And like, I watched Jeffrey Dahmer's documentary, and then I don't know why I feel negative. And I go, I know why. I'm about to blow your mind. So for me,
blow your mind.
Dude, I'm a naturally negative, pessimistic, cynical guy. That's my base. And then I do a lot of things to change that, because what I learned over the years is the ROI of positivity is way better than the ROI of negativity.
Dude, so funny, because I didn't know what Nextdoor was. But someone said, hey, dude, like, you have something on Nextdoor right now. Like, you need to go. I was like, okay, whatever. So I download the app and I look at it, and, whatever, it gets fixed. And then I'm starting to get emails from them and notifications. It's like, this guy broke into my house. This thing, watch out for these package thieves.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
spicy.
Yeah, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? Is this like the gossip app of your neighborhood?
Yeah, I'm not on it for that. Like, another door I don't open is next door because I got too like I'm too sharp tongued from Twitter. I don't want to be, and I live near these people, so I don't want to be like.
Yeah, I was like, I'm getting rid of Nextdoor. This app sucks.
It's not good for me.
I deleted it.
Yeah.
But I was just like, oh man, I didn't even know this existed. This is like the town hall of gossip. Like, for everything.
No, I don't need it. So, but again, like, I think part of it is, what are you practicing? Like, what are you?
I actually have something you could steal. I call it control what you consume.
Oh yeah, it's great.
And it's just like, bro, if you want to, anything in your life, you better start just putting the right things around you.
Yeah. Well, and that's for me, like, I'm setting the day every morning. Like, I'm waking up, and even if I don't feel like it, I'm like, okay, well, here's the things I'm going to do. And I'm doing them all day. Like, that's the other thing is that, like, I don't keep God locked into my quiet time. Like, he's not only my God from 6 to 6:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, he's the all day God. And so, like, I'm doing things all day that are continuing to raise me back to a positive place. They're going to keep me in motion, that are keeping me, online with what I'm trying to do. And I'm just deliberate about that. So I think for me, that's been one of those things where, okay, how do I keep positive? How do I keep in motion? I have to be deliberate about my actions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think just, man, when I think about all the problems people have, it just comes from either like a lack of discipline, a lack of knowledge. And I don't know. I think like those are like basically it.
Yeah.
It's like you just don't know what you don't know. You need to go find the truth.
Well, and that's where relationships are great. Because you might go, man, if I, like, here's the way things work. And somebody goes, I've tried that. And I got like, here's what happened. And you go, I didn't even know that was possible. Thanks for, you just broadened, like when I, okay, an example would be a young speaker would ask me questions, and I'd go, one of the most important things you need to do is interview the client before you go to the event. They go, I didn't even know I was supposed to do that. I go, a month before, call them up, ask a series of questions, take a bunch of notes. When you go speak, weave those things into the speech, and it's going to be so much better. And like one of my questions, I'll say, is there anything I shouldn't say from stage? And that question gets them to think, because maybe they just went through a CEO transition and they don't want me to talk about transitions because everybody there is sensitive. And if I ask that question, I get to not step on that landmine.
Yeah.
And another question I ask is, if you think of a keynote as a line and one end says instruction, one end says inspiration, where do you want it to land? And they go, ooh, we're going to have subject matter experts all day, so we need you at 90% inspiration, only 10% instruction. Or sometimes they go, this is a room full of engineers. If you don't give them real takeaways, they're going to be frustrated. Give us 60% instruction, 40% inspiration. So I'm asking that. And then, dude, when I show up, I've got that woven in. And like one of my goals is I want to say a joke that will only work in that room. So like I'll have a dental joke that kills to 1,000 dentists, but if I gave it to 1,000 hedge fund managers, it wouldn't be interesting. But now I've super served that audience. And now they go, this guy doesn't just have one talk that he forces on every audience. He took the time and the care to customize this for us. And those are those little things that clients bring you back when they go, man, he used that exact example we told him about. And that really changed the texture of the whole speech. And so when a young speaker asks me that, I'll save you 10 years. This took me 10 years to come up with this list of questions. These are the best questions because I've asked 1,000 CEOs these questions at Range Rover, Comedy Central, Walmart, whatever. And if I give you those questions, you just saved a decade.
Well, you know what's funny is before you ever meet somebody, I found this with consultants, with speakers, with people, you can really get to know how good they are by their level of like preparedness.
Oh yeah.
Right? Because I remember that with first time I really dealt with, okay, so like, we started throwing wealth cons and big events and all this stuff. I was never trained how to do it.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of just figured it out intuitively.
Sure.
But one of the things that you mentioned, I frame it a different way, but I do it in the events is a mix of tactics and hype. And so I always, throughout the event, weave both.
Yeah.
Because at my events, you need both. Like it's just like people are coming there to get inspired and hyped up. People are also coming to get tactics. So it's like, boom, I'm going to bring, I know this guy's an innovation or a motivation guy.
Yeah.
He's never going to give him anything tactical.
Yeah.
It's like, bro, do you.
Yeah.
Just kill it. And then the next guy is going to get him back with tactics. And
you have to offset it because otherwise,
and then because you'll go to events that are all hype and you're like, bro, I didn't learn anything.
Yeah.
And then you'll go to events that are all tactics and you're like, this was a snooze fest.
So boring.
So you need to have both. And I do it purposely knowing who each person is. But what you made me think about was when I had Rory Vaden come speak at my Kingdom Summit. And he sent me this massive list of questions.
Yeah.
I was like, Rory, I can't answer these, dude. Like, I don't even want to. I was like, let's just hop on a call for like 5 minutes. I'm like, I'm not going to answer these.
Yeah.
And then he's like, okay, so like, how can I serve the audience? What do you think they need? I'm like, do you? I'm like, whatever you want. These are Christian business people.
Yeah.
You're a Christian business person. Just do you.
Yeah.
And it was great. He talked about apologetics, actually.
And he's a pro.
He's a pro. And that's why
it
it showed me like what a pro and how serious he took his talk, how he prepared that specifically for that event. You know, it was extremely good.
100%. And part of that's just being willing to ask questions and learn. Like I was grilling Tiffany before we did this.
Yeah.
Because I was curious about like, oh, wow, you started in sales, but now you're doing this. Like, what are you guys working on? What's going on? And I got to learn because I have a company that's a lot smaller than yours that we're growing it. And I'm like, all right, they're doing a live event space in there. They've got, here's what the studio set up. They moved downstairs from upstairs. Like I'm trying to use that to go, how can I get better in this moment? Like, and Tiffany can teach me some things that I get better. But I think you're right. I think there's always signs of somebody who's a pro versus an amateur. And one of them is being prepared. One of them's asking questions. One of them's listening.
Well, and even too, it's like, I've had a lot of people, you know, because you went on a tour and Tiffany took you and everything else, and you meet people and they're like, dude, you guys are like really, you know, well run. Like people were doing this and that. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, we need to do more together. And it's like, you have one chance to make an impression.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people end up being speakers. They end up making introductions to other people and vouching for me and all these things. And it's like, well, yeah. It's like, I want them to come in and get a service and a level of excellence that they just really haven't seen.
Well, and dude, that's part of your social strategy too. Like people that come and sit on this couch know there's going to be high level social clips that come out of this, like high quality. Like, because when you have people on this couch, like when you know, Erwin, Grant, whoever, they have very limited amounts of time.
Yeah.
And they go, I want this hour, 2 hours I spend with Ryan to turn into really 10 hours of impact or 1,000 hours of impact. And you talk about that all the time, the amount of minutes your videos have been watched. Like I've seen you do that story. And so I think that's one of those things that as you kind of work on yourself, work on your life, there's little shortcuts where people go, oh, okay. Like an example would be, I interviewed a CEO of a bank and I said to him, hey, what's a book or two you've read like lately that you like? And I ask people that question all the time. And he goes, I'll send you our list. He sends me back a 2-page, 74-book list categorized of all the books he recommends to his team, and anyone on the team can get a free copy if they request it. And dude,
like, this guy takes it serious.
Versus somebody going, oh, I kind of like Think and Grow Rich, like the, you know, like, purpose driven, like the ones that everybody says, or have you heard of the Bible? Man, it's thick. Like it's thick. The two experiences of somebody doing that versus this dude sending me his PDF. Like there was no question if I was like, I need to learn from that guy.
I would believe that I should read all these books.
Yeah, I was like, this guy is next level. There was no part of me that was like, I bet it's a poorly run bank. Like, dude, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So like for me, I'm trying to do more of those, you know, in my life where I'm connecting with guys and I'm going like, hey, have you tried this? Have you thought of this? And I'm always asking questions like that so that I can learn from them.
And I think it's where you have to learn what your natural tendency is. And so I think there's a lot of guys who are very detail oriented. So like I'll see a lot of detail oriented guys who have things like that.
Yeah.
Very organized. And I'm like very impressed. And then you look at it and it's like, yeah, but they're not really doing a ton. Like they're so stuck in the weeds of organization, right? And then you'll have guys who are very like just vision based and motivators and you know, visionaries. And then it's like, bro, this person is running around like his head's cut off.
Yeah.
Like he just nothing is organized. Somehow they figure it out, but man,
they're stumbling into it on fire.
Yeah, it's just a chaos all the time. And so I know I'm naturally that kind of person.
Yeah.
And so I purposely know, like, hey, I got to figure out ways to become more systematized and organized.
But that's part of the team too.
Yeah.
Like you knowing that about yourself, you then surround yourself with systems and people that backfill that. And I guarantee you've booked speakers for your events, and some of them had amazing assistants and systems. And got you everything you needed on time. There were slides ahead of time.
Yeah.
You knew flights ahead of time. And there were some where your team had to chase down and be like, hey, the event's in an hour. I want to make sure you're in Vegas right now.
Yep.
And you go, and so like you would say to that person, if they were willing to take the feedback, man, an assistant would change your life and would make every client you work with, like, you don't know what's happening on the client side. It's not a good experience. You're amazing. You're top tier at the stage part, but the other stuff, like, there's a dentist I knew who was an amazing dentist. Like, he was great at the craft of it. He ran a terrible business. Like, you would show up for an appointment, they go, we don't have that written anywhere. And you'd go, you sent me a postcard in the mail that today was my appointment. They're like, And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs go out of business, is where they started with a passion.
Yeah.
They were they love cutting hair, and they're like, I'm going to start my own salon. And they don't know that comes with like 99 other things.
Yeah.
And they just want to do the one thing. And it's like, well, you better backfill, you better figure out systems.
Yeah. It's just becoming self-aware. Like, and then also, like you said, being willing to learn and always be a student. Like, I remember, you mentioned Ed Milet. And so first time I met him was at his house in Laguna. Mm-hmm. And so we did a podcast at his house, and he goes, and it was a compliment. He goes, bro, you're like a really good interviewer. Where did you train and learn? Yeah. And I was like, nowhere. Like, talking to people, just doing it a lot.
And lots of reps and paying attention to what didn't work. And then
I said, also just genuinely being curious and asking questions that I truly want to know. Mm-hmm. He's like, wow, that's crazy. And I go, but like, you're one of the best speakers ever. Mm-hmm. And I go, so what do you think I need to improve on? And he said, really what you need to improve on is your preparation. He goes, you're so naturally talented that you get by without any prep.
Yeah.
And I still have not corrected that, but I'm at least aware of it. Like, if I do want to take the podcast to the next level, it is going to come from being more prepared.
That's one of the prices.
Yeah.
And you're like, and right now you're like, I'm not ready to pay that price yet.
I know the price.
I know it costs.
Yep.
And when it does, and when I'm willing for that to be a big part of the business, you know what it costs, and you'll have to move other stuff around.
Yeah.
Like, that's because you went into the events the same way. Like, where you're like, I know the cost of these events. I know what excellence looks like. Been to a ton of events. Am I willing for my team and I to pay this cost in order to serve these people this way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, right? Like, even though I know what the next level will take, I am not going to enjoy prepping.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not. And I'm like also looking at where we're at, and I'm like, I'm fine with where we're at.
Yeah.
I don't need to get to the next level.
You shouldn't trade 5 hours of prep for 4% of improvement. Like,
that's exactly the point. I don't think my improvement is so dramatic based on the amount of work.
Yeah, totally. And then the other thing is, like, you go, okay, can my team help me prep? Can I, like, that's the thing with, like, ChatGPT, we've started to use that for so many questions where we'll feed it something and go, give us 20 great questions, and 16 of them are amazing.
Yeah.
Like, 4 of them are dogs, but like 16 of them were like, this is really, so I think there's so many ways to do that. But I do the same thing. Like, my podcast right now, I have a podcast called All It Takes Is a Goal. I know what it takes to get to the next level. And I'm the same way, where I'm like, this is it right now. It's a great conversation starter. It's not a big profit center for me. So I'm not going to put a ton of resources in it until we decide it is going to be a profit center. We're going to scale it. Because I think where people get in trouble is they go, it's easy. Just like people say to you, like, do a podcast, man, it's easy. Go, yeah, a bad podcast is easy.
Yeah.
A bad book is easy. A good book, a good podcast, like, those should take time and lift. And you have so many kind of tokens you can play. And you have to decide as a leader, I'm going to play this one.
Yeah, that's what I need to, like, memorize this quote, because I reference this story all the time, and I only saw it once on Instagram, and it just made complete sense to me. But it was the Netflix CEO or one of the founders was talking, and he was like, essentially paraphrasing, that the number one skill that made them successful and that he thinks that people lack who are in business is the ability to prioritize the right thing and do things in the right sequence.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's exactly what I've been trying to say. Because, for example, like, as he was like, dude, we need to take the podcast to the next level. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, you're not wrong, but with limited resource, time, money, energy, is that the best use of what we're going to, do. And then once again, back to the cost. Okay, what's the cost going to be? Because if I'm going to spend an extra 10 hours, 15 hours a week on this podcast, where's that coming from?
Yeah.
And, and then at the point, why? Let's answer the question, why? Why do we even want to grow it even bigger? What's the point? Do we have a good answer for that?
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to go take 15 hours from, say, the business, where I know I'll make more money focusing those 15 hours over there, then it's probably not worth it.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely not taking it from my family because I'm like good either way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
for
the podcast
me, the
is
podcast
good.
the same way where my book is worth 20 hours a week because I know what that does.
Right.
I'll speak about a book for 10 years. My podcast is worth about 2 hours a week right now. Now, it as a go-getter, it frustrates me some days where
Like, I should be better.
I could do this. I could, I know that, but I think it's also like you could do another version where it's like you're in the shape you want to be in. Like if you have young kids, you go, I get to work out 3 times a week. I don't have 6 days a week because I've got young kids or whatever it is. And you go,
I'm not a single 25-year-old.
I'm not a single, like I might not see my abs this season, whatever the thing is. And you go, but I'm going to, because this is what I have. This is the amount of time I have to spend and I know what it would cost. And I had a friend who got really serious about health and he was like, I was bringing my own food to dinner parties. And eventually it was like, what am I doing?
Yeah, that sucks.
And my wife will go like, I don't run full marathons. I stop at half marathons. And part of it is I made a commitment to my wife. She's like, you're compulsive. You'll be doing ultras before you know it. And I don't want to live with that training session and that amount, like you're doing a 4-hour run and telling the kids, like, I'll see, like,
Yeah.
I'll see. And same with golf. I read my favorite cartoon about golf, which is in the New York Times, New Yorker actually, it said, one golfer to another said, you never truly appreciate golf until you have your own family to ignore. And I thought that is fire because dudes who are like, they work 60 hours a week and then they're at the golf course 8 hours a week.
Yeah.
And there's no party that goes, I bet they have a good marriage. Like,
No.
I bet they just like have one of those rich.
Well, even for me, right? Like I was like, dude, I love golf and I want to play.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I have reserved the weekends for my family.
Yeah.
So what do I do?
Yeah.
And I had a choice. And so for a couple of years, I golfed on Fridays. Yeah. I just cut my work week down. I was like, hey, I'll make less money to go play. Yeah. It is
it was worth it.
It was a trade-off.
Yeah.
Right. And then now I'm like, well, I'll teach my family to play.
Yeah.
And now we get to play on the weekends.
Yeah. And that's the thing where you have to be open-handed with it because the things it would take you to get to the next level of golf.
Yeah, I do.
Like you can see them. You're not confused.
Yeah,
like
I was a pro athlete. I know exactly what it takes.
If you hired a trainer and gave 3 hours a day for the next,
And I've thought about that too. Like I have legit thought, okay, you know what? What if my business got into a place where, it's just making so much and it's so automated.
Yeah.
And I could focus like I was training as a golf professional.
Yeah.
Or this is like one of the ideas we keep playing with of like starting a golf YouTube channel.
Dude, I saw you ask Gary Vee about that.
Yeah.
You posted that clip where you're like, hey, and I have people walk with me and I do business stuff. And
he's like, it's great.
Let's go.
And I'm like, it would for sure work and it would be great. But what's the cost?
Yeah.
The cost is, well, dude, I can't play at the same course every day. Like we're going to have to travel.
It's going to change the golf. Like that's the other thing. It's not like,
and I better be good because now I don't want to be no scrub on the channel.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to like literally commit everything for it to succeed.
Yeah.
So then at that point, I ask myself the question, okay, what if I don't want to commit everything? What if it's just for fun and it's a hobby? Well, guess what? I ain't having no fun if it ain't great.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So there's no in between. I'm not going to do
Well,
it.
keep it for you. Like keep it as the hobby. You know what I mean? Like you're not, there's the tagline of the episode. If it's not great, it's not going to be fun.
If this thing ain't like popping off and I'm killing it, then I ain't doing it.
Yeah,
it's not fun.
what am I even doing right now?
It's just a waste of time.
I don't write books to not sell them.
Like, dude, yes, I enjoy the process of getting better, but bro, there needs to be a payoff.
Yeah. I
There needs
tell
to be a
people that
win.
all the time. Like when they don't want to promote their book or sell it, I always say, next time write a diary. You can just put that on your nightstand. You don't have to promote that at all. But if you put it on a shelf, guess what?
You better
it's go
do it.
time.
Yeah.
It's go time. And they're like, I don't want to bother people. I'm like, then they're not going to know the book exists. Like,
Why'd you write it?
Yeah, don't write it. Like, you knew it was going to be public. And so that for me, and I have to tell myself that over and over. I'm like, hey, it's a new book to a lot of people. Like they haven't, Soundtracks has sold 170,000 copies. That means there's a lot of humans that haven't read it. Like,
Right.
you know, so like
way more than haven't.
Way more than haven't. Like when somebody comes up to me and goes, no offense, I've never heard of you before. Like after I speak, I go, you are in the majority of people. Don't welcome to the club.
I expect that.
I expect that. I had no problem with that. I got just one more person to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's interesting too, that you brought up another point about just because it's good for somebody else doesn't mean it's good for you. So like I was even thinking about it with your book. You're like, the book is worth 20 hours a week to me. My podcast is worth 2. And I was like, yeah, that would be like flipped for me.
Yeah.
The podcast is worth 20 hours a week if I wanted to do it. And then like a book, I don't really even care.
Take it to Lewis' house. Like how, like if I told Lewis, like a podcast is only worth 1 hour a week, you'd be like, not mine. Like, mine is doing great. Like, or anybody that you go like, take it to a professional athlete where it's like, man, you're practicing a lot. Like, yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it. This is the thing. And I think as you kind of continue to grow, you're constantly tweaking that. You're constantly going. So like for me, I stopped speaking on Fridays for like 4 years when my oldest daughter was in the high school band because Friday night football games were really expensive to me.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to be, you know, somewhere at an event. I had 8 of those every fall. Like that's a limited thing. So like now though, they're both out of the house. I'll speak on Friday all day for that season.
Yeah.
It wasn't. So I think people sometimes want a one-time solution that they live forever. And that's not how life goes.
It works.
It's always you changing and tweaking and growing and stretching. And that's ultimately more fun than the one-time thing.
Yeah. I'm kind of already thinking about what the next stage of my life looks like. And in anticipation of that, trying to get even better at business because, you know, my kids right now are young, so they don't have after school activities.
Yeah.
Like my wife takes them to different cool things throughout the day. I'm here, you know, it's all good. But yeah, to your point, it's like, man, what happens, you know, if my son wants to play baseball and of course I'm going to be his coach.
Yeah.
You know,
you're going to be all in.
I'm going to be all in and I'm going to be the best coach. Yeah. And it's like, well, guess what, dude? You know, practice starts at this time. You might not be able to practice your golf game.
Yeah.
You might not be able to do X, Y, Z. So and I'm like, man, especially if I have 5 kids.
Yeah.
That's a lot of different activities.
Well, and you go, this is a golf season. And maybe there's, you know, and the other thing is there'll be one of the kids that loves golf and you get to do that. And
we're going to force them into my hobbies.
I've tried that.
You love making sales calls, videos, and playing golf.
No, I tried that with running. My oldest daughter hates it. My youngest daughter and I just ran a half marathon.
She likes it.
So there's this, the older they get, the more your job as a parent is to throw fuel on their fire.
Right.
Versus start the fire. Because as soon as you have more than one kid, you go, oh, they came wired. They're different. They came. And so I think that's part of the challenge that's fun about parenting is like, if I tried to force my older daughter to run, it would distance our relationship. My younger daughter, it's a connection point. But even that, somebody said to me, what were your goals for the half marathon with your daughter? And I said, they're like, what time? I was like, no time. I had 2 goals, that at the end of it, she didn't hate running and she didn't hate me. And so I made it fun. So I Instagrammed every mile. Every mile I'd do a story and go, hey, we're on mile 2. McCrae, what are you listening to right now? And she'd be like, I'm listening to Taylor Swift. And like, she had a good time doing it. I didn't put the pressure of her on, like, we need to hit a certain time. We need to, like, because that would have sucked the joy right out of it.
Right.
And so that's, again, one of those tensions is like, I don't ever want to squeeze the joy out of a moment because I'm over gold.
Yeah. Yeah, we do that with golf. My son, Judah, he's 1. He just runs out the cart and literally picks up the ball on the green every time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, we're not going to putt.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Yeah. That's a wrap for this hole.
I'll give myself a birdie. That would have went in. Thanks, Judah.
That would have been fine, Judah. Yeah. That's funny.
And he knows. He actually picks it up and puts it in the cup.
There you go.
He's like, this is where it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Why didn't you hit it here?
Yeah. It's weird, Dad, that you put it so far away.
Yeah, like it should be here.
How many courses do you play here?
Well, I mean, like I mainly play on my home course now because I live there.
Gotcha.
And it's better than all of them. So it's just like,
oh, yeah. That's such a Vegas. It's just the number 1. So why am I going to silver medal? Why would I?
I mean, it goes back to, hey, if I'm going to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
You just do it the best. There's no in between.
Yeah, that's funny.
And I didn't start there. I started on, these public courses.
Sure.
And then I realized, I was like, I cannot be hanging out with these peasants all day.
Yeah.
And it's not even like a money thing. I just am not going to sit there on the golf course for 5 hours on a public course, which always takes 5 hours.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
it's not efficient.
But and you can't just walk out whenever you want.
Yeah.
You can't, like, nothing about it's efficient.
Yeah. And so for you, well, you have the same problem I have, which is like poorly run businesses drive you crazy.
Yeah.
And so like when you're around something and you can see the things and you're like,
and then people will be like, oh, so you're just too good to play a public course. It's like, no, like I just I hold myself to high standards.
You have
of
different
everything.
values too.
Yeah,
that's
it's like I'm not going to do it. It's just it's not going to be enjoyable playing on a crappy course that takes 5 hours, and then you're also around people who don't even like. You could get paired with anyone.
Yeah.
Like everything about it sucks.
Yeah. So why wouldn't you say this is where I'm
the thing is, you don't have to do that. There's a solution. It's called getting a membership.
Yeah.
And just other people have the same problem I have.
Yeah.
And they created a solution.
That's solvable. We say that's the one thing we say in our family is like, that's a solvable problem.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people will just tell you the problem again and again. And you're like, that's pretty solvable.
Bro, you could just join a private club. That costs a lot of money. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously that's the cost of the problem.
Yeah. And I was willing, for me,
I was willing to pay the cost.
For me, that was a good trade-off. Yeah, totally.
To get all my hours back, to play on a better court. And also, too, the networking aspect of being around, it's just a mastermind at that point.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
You're just around high caliber people.
Yeah. So for me, my version of that is like people sometimes go, why don't you only fly Delta? Like they've got a great Sky Lounge, whatever. But in Nashville, most of our directs are Southwest.
Yeah.
So I like Delta. I really like Delta. Like I really do. But to fly out to see you was a 4-hour flight. If I did Delta, it would have been 7 hours because I would have had to go to Atlanta first, sit there for 2 hours. And I measure the time. I go, there's not going to be a first class, like whatever. And where some people go, but you arrive better rested. I don't arrive 3 hours better rested. Like I have friends who like only do Delta and they make it so complicated and so hard where I'm like, nah, dude, the time is, if it takes me 4 versus 10,
the time is the valuable thing. Cause you know what's so funny? I just talked about like kind of being bougie on a golf course, but I will fly Spirit and Frontier and South. I don't give a crap. I really don't.
Get me there.
I literally do not care. I care about the time that it fits the exact time frame I want to leave, get there, and leave and come home.
Yeah.
Because almost every single trip I do is a day trip.
Yeah.
It don't matter where I'm going. Yeah. Like if I'm going to Texas, I'm literally trying to go there so early in the morning, and then I'm catching the flight at the end of the day. And whatever that airline is, I'm cool with it. I don't really care.
That's what Zig Ziglar told me. I had lunch with him before he passed away, and he said one of his big things was sleep in your own bed as many times as you can.
Yeah.
He said if you can get home, sleep in your own bed. Sleep in your own bed.
That's what I try to do.
It's funny that's a question I sometimes ask people. I'll go, what are you bougie on? What are you low budget on? Because people will go, this is the thing, this matters to me. I need, like this matters to me. And then there's other things where like, they're like, but I love a Costco sweatshirt. And you go like, you're worth $500 million. They're like, I don't want a $10,000 sweatshirt. Like that's crazy town. So what you would say golf you're bougie on and flying your budget?
Yeah, flying I'm super budget. I do not care about flying. I would say, I can't say I'm budget on cars, but like, I just have one car now. Like I don't care to have lots of cars.
Have a fleet.
No, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm probably not budget on a lot of things now I think about it, but still flying, I just don't care about.
But that's a big one because there's a lot of people that will go, okay, once I hit a certain level, then I only fly this way.
Yeah.
And it's like, I want to get there and get back. But that's the time thing.
Yeah. And honestly, it's more of like a return thing, right? So it's like time obviously is worth whatever your time value is, right? And so clearly, like, I would much rather not have a delay. I would much rather not sit in the airport for whatever. I'll rather sit on Frontier in a small seat.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
But on the flip side too, for example, with the private club, the ability to take my family out without a tee time whenever I want is super. How do you even put a value on that?
Yeah.
Right. And then to be able to take the golf cart from my house and get there in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Like the time value of that is crazy. And I was actually a part of another private club before this one that wasn't the case. So it was like a 20-minute drive, but it was super nice. And they made you always schedule your time. You couldn't just walk out there when you wanted. Yep. I'm like, what am I paying for?
Yeah.
Like, I want freedom. I want to come whenever I want. You're telling me I can't play because you guys
didn't fit the schedule.
Yeah. I'm like, that's not why I haven't. And they're like, well, you're going to have to go join a higher end club. And guess what? This club was over $100,000 to join. And I'm like, well, that's worth it to me.
Yeah, that's the price. Yeah.
Because I don't want to deal with this.
Totally. How long were you in the other one?
Well, I was in the other one for a year and a half before I joined this other one. And then I stayed in both for like maybe another year. And then I realized I never went back to the other one.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, why am I even paying for this? This is
Because
dumb.
once the inconvenience was removed.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even have a desire to go to the other one.
Yeah.
But, well, dude, it's been great hanging out, man.
Always fun, man.
Where can people connect with you?
I have a podcast, All It Takes Is a Goal. We talked about soundtracks a little bit, and my book also titled All It Takes Is a Goal, and then jonacuff.com. And then I'm all over social under Jon Acuff.
Cool. Guys, go check them out. Grab those books, especially if you want to set goals or change your mindset with soundtracks. And make sure you subscribe to the next one. We'll see you. Peace.